we don't say Tachanun, even after the Yom Tov is over, until Chodesh Cheshvan, which means that we're expected to still be under the influence of the Yom Tov. It's interesting. The lashon of the Magen Avraham is Yesh Mekoymos she'ein noiflim ad cheshvan. Doesn't say ein noiflim ala pehem, which is really what he means. But ein noiflim, it's a remez that there are places where people don't fall from the madrega of the Yom Tov, at least until cheshvan, and they still stay high up there. Anyway, the truth is that the Yom Tovim are meant to impact the entire year until the next Yom Tov. As we say, V'hasienu, Elokeinu es birkas moyadecha. The Avudraham has 4 pirushim in the word V'hasienu. One of them is that V'hasienu is miloshen masuo, which means a torch. Like they would lift up masuos in the time of the Beis Hamikdash in order to indicate that tonight is Rosh Chodesh. So in other words, the Birkas Moyadecha serves as a torch to illuminate the weeks and months that follow. So I want to focus on one akuda that we can and should take from the Yom Tov, which, as you'll see, the Rambam sees it as the central point of the Moyadim. In Hallel, which we say on Yom Tov, we say on Rosh Chodesh also, but that's just a minig. On Yom Tov, it's Mi'ikar Adin. It's according to the Ramban, even Midairaisa. So there's a pasuk that we say, which is Mikimi me offer do me ashpois yorim evyoin. So Hashem lifts up the evyoin from the ashpois. How is it that one evyoin is in many ashpois? Probably because evyoin is, as Chazal say, to'ev l'chol dover. He's hungry for everything. So he's one Evyon is in many ashpais. And how does Hashem lift up the Evyon from the many ashpais? Lohishivi im nedivim. Im nedivei amoy. It would seem that he by becoming charitable, by becoming generous, that's how he lifts up the Evyon from the ashpais. Which means that by just giving him what he needs, or more than what he needs, he still can't be lifted. He can't rise above the ashplace because his problem is not just where he stands on the socioeconomic scale, but his problem is an attitude, a mentality. He's a toiv l'chol davar, and in order to switch that, he has to become ois evyoin. He has to become a nodiv. He has to no longer be on the taking side, but on the giving side. So the me'ashpois yorim evyoin is through the lahaishivi im nedivin. So what is the shaykhis of this to Yom Tov? The Rambam says in the Sefer Mitzvahs, Mitzvahs Aseichov, when the Rambam talks about the mitzvah of Binyan Beis Abchira, the Rambam says, the Elov Tiyeh Ha'aliche V'Hakibutz B'chol Shana V'Shana. In other words, that one of the roles that are played by the Beis Hamikdash is that Elov Tiyeh Ha'aliche V'Aliyah L'Regel V'Hakibutz. So the Rambam is saying that Aliyah L'Regel is not just about coming to the Beis Hamikdash, but it's also about kibbutz. It's about the getting together. And as he says in the Moreh Nevuchim in the end of Perek Memvav, v'tam toyeles hachag hu yodua, l'mashi yagia lo'odam min hakibbutz hahu. And he says, his ahev b'nei odom v'chevra ktsosom el ktsosom. That B'shas Yidden got together in Yerushalayim. So people came to a point of his ahev b'nei odom v'chevra ktsosom el ktsosom. So where did the Rambam get this from? I mean, the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, I mean, the Torah says clearly, it's Shalosh B'amim Bashana Yeroi Kol Zchurcha Es Pnei Hashem Elokecha. It's about Lirois, Leirois. It's about meeting with the Rabbeinu Shalom Kaviyachol. How did the Rambam find in the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel that it's about kibbutz and that it's about his ahev b'nei Adam Ktsasom el Ktsasom? So, we say, Loishivi im Nedivei Amoy. Who are the Nedivei Amoy? So, the Gemara says in Sukkah, Daf Memches Amud Beis, rather Daf Memtes Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Dorash Rava, my diksiv, Mayofu Pa'amayich Ban Olim, Bas Nodiv, Mayofu Pa'amoiseyan Shal Yisrael. How beautiful are the footsteps of Yidden, B'shosha Oilim L'Regel. And Yidden are over here, are called Bas Nodiv, which he explains means Bitoy Shel Avrom Avinu Shenikro Nodiv. Shenemar Nedivei Amim Ne'esafu Am Elokei Avrom, V'lo Elokei Yitzchok V'Yaakov, Elo Elokei Avrom Shoyatchilu L'Gerim. So the Gemara says that Klal Yisrael is called Bas Nodiv when the Oila L'Regel. And Bas Nodiv is Bitei Shel Avrom Avinu, who's considered a Nodiv. And why is he considered a Nodiv? Because he's the Tchilo L'Gerim. So what does this mean? Rashi says, Nodiv shenedovoi liboy lahakir esboiroi. So Avram was generous. He had a generosity of spirit, and that is seen in the fact that nedovoi liboy lahakir esboiroi, that he had the nedivus alev to recognize the Rebbeinu Shalom. I mean, we think, recognizing the Rebbeinu Shalom is something philosophical. He searched, he found. What does it have to do with Nedivus? What does it have to do with Nedivus? And then Rashi says, Tchilo L'Gerin, Benidvas Liboy L'Hizgayer. He was the first of the Nedivim because he was Misnadev L'Hizgayer. So what does it have to do with Nedova? It would seem that really a human being should recognize the Creator. I mean, if you just think about all the parts of our own body and just how we function, and you're in touch with your soul. I mean, you're makir es boirei. So why is it that people are not makir es boirei? That's because of our ego, because of our sense of self that serves as a mechitza between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom. But a person that breaks out of the shell of his selfish self and he sees beyond himself, he's makir es boirei. So Avram Avinu, we know that the midah of Avram Avinu is the midah of chesed. Tiknemes liYaakov chesed laAvram. The chesed is actually how he found the Rebbeinu Shalom, because the Baal Chesed sees beyond himself. He sees outside of himself. And he's nedovoi liboy lahakir es boirei. And that's why we say that b'shas yidna oila l'regel mayofu pa'omoiseyen shel Yisrael. B'shosha oilam l'regel mayofu pa'omayich ban olim bas nodiv. So, it's as the Gemara says in Bava Basra, Rebbe Elazar says, the Gemara says, Rebbe Elazar used to give a pruta la'anya, he used to give a pruta to an ani, v'hodar matzli, and then he would daven. He's the ksiv, v'ani betzedek ech ze ponecha. And he touched the betzedek means with tzedakah, I see your face. meaning that seeing Kaviyachol, the face of the Rebbeinu Shalom, how is that possible? Only through tzedakah. In other words, if you are capable of seeing the face of the needy, you're capable of seeing the face of another human being, so you can see the Rebbeinu Shalom. So ani betzedek echze ponecha yohiv prute la'anya v'hoder matzli. So the lerois es pnei Hashem Elokecha that Yidden did the sholish ba'am bashona was really through the his ahev ktsasam el ktsasam. It was through the kibbutz when Yidden got together and they loved one another. So that enabled them to be lerois as pnei Hashem Elokecha. So the Rambam is actually geboit on this Gemara that says that the Mayofu Pa'amayach Banaolim Bas Nodiv is about Aliyah L'Regel, and the Gemara tells us that this is a function of a Bas Nodiv, B'tei Shel Avram Avinu, that they managed to take off the mechitza of the self, and the Mela they were zoichet to be lerois as Pnei Hashem Elokecha. And this is something that we have to take along for all the Yemois Hashanah. You know, the Rambam, in his caption, the Rambam has a caption in all the 14 Sforim in the Sefer Yad HaChazakah. The Rambam has a caption on top of each Sefer. And on the top of the Sefer Azmanim, he chose the pasuk, Nochalti eit voisecha la'olam hisesoin libi heima. You know, the Rambam, when he defines in his Hagdama what the Sefer Azmanim is, he says, Echloil boy, ha-mitzvahs shehem bizmanim yaduin. That this Sefer is about the mitzvahs that have specific times. And that's as opposed to the Sefer Ahava, which the Rambam says, Echloil boy ha-mitzvahs shehem tedirois, shenitztavinu bohem, k'dei lehoy v'samokom l'zochrei tomit, k'gen kriya shma, tefillah, l'brachas, etc. So the Sefer Azmanim is dedicated to mitzvahs aseisha azman grama, to the mitzvahs that have zmanim yeduim. Nevertheless, the Rambam chooses as the koiseres for the Sefer Azmanim, Nochalti eit veisecha la'olam, he says, soin li bihema. In other words, that the sasoin of the moyadim is in order that we should come to a madrega of Nochalti eit veisecha li'olam. In other words, it's not meant to be just for the here and now, but it's meant to bring us to Nachalti eit veisecha la'olam, that it's something that we should take along with us for the rest of the year. You know, it's interesting that Pesach, the Torah doesn't b'chlal say a mitzvah of simcha. Shavuos it says once, and by Sukkot it says 3 times. We actually learned that there's a mitzvah of simcha on Pesach because hukshu hamoyad zelazeh. But what do I say? It's interesting because Pesach is the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Oitzionu mi'afela lo'ergodlu mi'avdus l'cheirus. I mean, it's the whole drama of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shavuos is this man matan Torah b'koilus ubrokim. But what's Sukkot? Sukkot, according to the man Omer, that it's Sukkot mamish. There's really no drama. It's about the 40 years that we traveled in the Midbar. You know, it's more or less the daily grind. I mean, and you know, it wasn't so simple. I mean, there were all kind of machlokes and tainas and difficulties. And this is what we celebrate with the most simcha, Zman Simcha Seinu, which maybe tells us that one finds simcha not in peak moments, but in the ability to find meaning in every day, in our mundane activities. That's where the real simcha is at. You know, in the Kein Taduru. And you know, simcha brings nedivus, as the pasuk says, Hashiva li sisoin yishecha v'ruach nediva tismacheni. You know, when a person is sour and bitter and unhappy, he doesn't have a spirit of giving. The more a person is content and has an appreciation for everything he has in life, he has the ability to look beyond himself. He's not wrapped up in himself, and he can see the needs of others, and he can connect to others. And as the Rambam says that the Yomim Tovim are meant to bring us to Nochalti Eid Voisecha La'olam Ki Sesoin Li Bihema. So when a Yid is Zoichet to Ashiva Li Sesoin Yeshecha, so he's Ruach Nediva Tismecheni. He has a Ruach Nediva all year round. Now, you know, this also connects to this week's parsha. But I want to preface it with a story. You know, that there's a Maisa, but what's the Maisa about Reb Nochem Chernobyl, that, as we all know, was a very poor man. All he had, there was one object that he had that was very special to him, and that was that he had the tefillin of the Baal Shem Tov. There was, in Chernobyl, there was a rich man that wanted to pay for these tefillin 1,000 ruble. But not, in spite of the fact that Reb Nochem Chernobyl was very poor and he had nothing, he wasn't willing or able to give up these tefillin and sell them. But since he had nothing and his children were hungry, and his wife constantly used to, nudge him that he should sell the tefillin and buy food for the children, but he wasn't willing. Now, once before Sukkot, there were no esrogim around. It was almost impossible to get a hold of an esrog in Russia. And Reb Nochem Chernobyl was very upset about this, that he's not going to have an esrog to be mekayim the mitzvah sayoim. And then Reb Nochem heard that there's a gvir that has an esrog, and he's willing to sell it for 1,000 ruble. So Reb Nochem got excited and immediately sold the tefillin, and he bought the esrog. Reb Nochem came home and he tells his wife, Baruch Hashem, I got an esrog. So his wife says, what do you mean you got an esrog? How did you get an esrog? So he says, I had those tefillin, I sold them for 1,000 ruble, and I bought the esrog. And she really couldn't take it because, for years she's begging to sell these tefillin and buy food. And now he bought the esrog, and she took the esrog and she threw it down, and the piton broke, and the esrog became puzzled. So what was Reb Nochem Chernobyl's response? He said softly, listen to me. Her name was Fegele. He said, there was a time that we had the tefillin. Afterwards, there was a time that we had the esrog. Now, we don't have the tefillin. We don't have the esrog. But I have you and you have me. Let's celebrate the Yom Tov. So, what's the meaning of the story? Because what is the esrog about? What are the tefillin about? The tefillin are l'shabed es halei v'hamoyach, to avodas Hashem. What is the esrog about? It's also about l'fnei Hashem Elokeichem. Smachtem l'fnei Hashem Elokeichem. And so what is it all about? It's about shaping our character. It's about making us into better people. And therefore, would you want to give up the tachlis of all the mitzvahs just in order to have the chayfetz of the mitzvah? So being upset now would have absolutely no value. And therefore, he said, at least we have each other, and let's be happy with the Yom Tov. So Avada, it takes a big madrega, but the point is not to get caught up with chitzonius, but know where it's all meant to lead. That it's all meant to lead to betzedek echze ponech. And caring about others. On Yomim Tovim we talk about, the Torah talks about lager, la yosoim, la almana, but it doesn't have to be a ger. It doesn't have to be a yosim. It doesn't have to be almana. Sometimes it's one's own spouse. It's one's own children. It's looking out for others. And as we know, charity begins at home. It's about caring about, not just about myself. You know, in this week's parasha, it says, Vayoyim Hashem Elokim, Loi Toiv, Heyoy Sa'odam Levadoi, Es Eloi Ezer Kenegdoi. So Rashi, who you know is says Mafurish in the beginning of the Torah that Ani Loi Bosi Elo Lepshuto, that I just want to explain Pashut Pshat. So on the pasuk Loi Toiv Heyoy Sa'odam Levadoi, Rashi says Shelo Yoimru Shtei Reshuyosei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yochid Be'el Yoinim Ve'ein Lo Yizug V'zeh Yochid B'Tachtoinim Ve'ein Lo Yizug. And this comes from the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, Pirkei Beis. It seems to us very far from Pshat. That why is it not good for man to be alone? Because you might say, Shtei Reshuyosei. The Gemara in Yevamos, Daf Samach Gimel says, Ashkechei, Rabbi Yosi le'Eliyahu, Rabbi Yosi met Eliyahu Hanavi. Amalei, Ksiv es Eloi Ezer. Rabbi Yosi asks Eliyahu, it says in the Torah, es Eloi Ezer, b'ma isha oizrosei la'odam. It's interesting that Rabbi Yosi asked Eliyahu Hanavi, so what in the world is the woman, how is she helping the husband? So he said, Amalei, Adam mevi chitim, Chitim koises, he brings wheat from the marketplace or from the field. Does he eat? Does he bite on chitim? Pishton, he brings flax home. Pishton loivesh, does he wear the pishton as is? Loi nimtzes me'ira einavu ma'amidosei al raglov, meaning that she bakes the bread, she sews the clothing. So she's the Ezer Kenegdoi. This would seem much closer to Pashut Pshat than what Rashi says, that Es Eloi Ezer Kenegdoi is Shelo Yoimru, Hu Yochid Be'el Yoinim, V'hu Yochid B'Tachtoinim. But it's Pashut, the Gemara and the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer are talking about two different issues. And both have to be addressed, because it doesn't say in the pasuk Loi Toiv le'odom heyoy soy levadoi. It doesn't say it's not good for man that he should be alone. It says Loi Toiv heyoy soy levadoi, meaning it's objectively not good, not subjectively. It's not because it's not about his needs, and it has to be that way because the Rebbeinu Shalom created man. He could have created a person who doesn't need an Ezer Kenegdoi and who's actually Toiv loy levadoi. So he created Adam as somebody that's loy toiv, that's not good for him to be alone. Why not? Why didn't he create somebody like that? So it must be that it's objectively loy toiv. In other words, loy toiv, heyois Adam levadoi. That's why Hashem created a person in a way that he's needy, and he has to have an Ezer. So why is it taka loy toiv? Here's where Rashi explains. The Pirkei Rebbe Lezer is explaining practically after man was created in a way that he can't give Zachanetza on his own, he's not self-sufficient. The Gemara is explaining why is he not how is he not? How do we see he's not self-sufficient? And Eliyahu answers Rabbi Yosi. But why was man created in a way that he shouldn't be self-sufficient? Because if he would be self-sufficient, says Rashi, he would become self-absorbed. And he would see himself as a Yochid B'Tachtoinim, and he would never make contact with a Yochid Be'el Yoinim. It would be Shtei Reshuyos. They would be in two different spheres, two different domains. He would never connect with the Yochid Be'el Yoinim. That's why man was created in a way that he's not self-sufficient, in a way that he's needy, in order that he might actually have to peek out of himself and see that there are other people out there, and see that he's not all and everything. And Memela, he'll be able to make contact with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that's really the idea that the Nedivus is the breaking out of oneself and creating the ability to meet with the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that's something that's really a daily affair. In as much as a person manages to peek out of his self and see beyond himself, ani b'tzedek ech ze ponecho, he can see the Rebbeinu Shalom. It also it tells you that, the famous pasuk of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li, that the Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li in the Mashal and the Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li in the Nimshal are really connected. It's not just a Mashal. It's through the experience of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li in the real world that one could be zoiche to the Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li in his connection with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So, having said all that, I wish you a gesunden Winter and bracha v'atzlocha b'chol ma'aseh yadaychem, and we'll see you again in Mitzvah Shem. It says lemishpatecha amdu hayom ki hakoil avodecha. Rashi says, Rashi the Radak, I don't remember that all the creatures and all the and all of creation is constantly carrying out the Rebbeinu Shalom's mishpat, the Rebbeinu Shalom's will. I mean, the Shemesh, the Yoreach, the Koichovim, they're all doing their job. L'mishpatecha amdu hayom ki hakol avodecha. That's how they teach the pasuk l'mishpatecha amdu hayom. The next pasuk says, Lulei soyrascha sha'ashuai ozav vadati ba'oni, which means they all naturally carry out the will of the Rebbeinu Shalom. But I, says David HaMelech, without Torah, I'd be totally lost. Because, like you say, man needs a tikkun. Yeah, in order to synchronize with the Bria and do Hakadosh Baruch Hu's will, we need the Torah. That same idea, by the way, is Rav Hirsch says in his Pirush on Tillim, on Hashamayim Esaprim Kvoid Kelo Ma'aseh Yodo Magid Rakia. The whole first half of that kapitel Yutes talks about, the Marchos Hashamayim, and then the second half says Torah Hashem Tzmim Shivas Nefesh. He says that in order for man to come to the madrega of carrying out the Rebbeinu Shalom's Ratzon like the Hashamayim Esaprim Kvoid Kelo Ma'aseh Yodo Magid Rakia, he needs the Torah Hashem Tzmim Shivas Nefesh because he's not there yet. I mean, he only Torah with Torah can he come to that madrega. Okay, Rabbi Say, Zayt alle gesund.